The movie kicks off with this lady named Laura Peterson. She's really sad because her son, Caleb, who was a soldier, passed away in the Afghanistan war. It's a tough time for her. But then, out of the blue, this guy named David Collins shows up. He used to be in the US Army like Caleb and says they were buddies over there. David tells Laura that he's here because of Caleb's will. Caleb wanted him to come over and tell his family how much he loves them. Laura, understandably, starts crying when she hears this last message from her son. David feels kinda bad for making her cry, but Laura thanks him for passing on Caleb's message and says he can stay at their place for as long as he wants. So, while Laura and David are chatting away, Laura's daughter Anna shows up. She's heading out to work and says her goodbyes to her mom. Laura introduces David to Anna before she leaves. Now, let's switch scenes for a bit. Caleb's younger brother, Luke, is still at school. Poor guy doesn't have any friends, so he's an easy target for bullies. Those mean kids even throw his face into a school locker before he heads home. When Luke gets back home, David, the friend of Caleb's, introduces himself to Luke and tries to get to know him better. David notices a little bruise on Luke's face and asks him about it. But Luke tells a fib and says he accidentally hit himself while playing football. Shortly after, Spencer, who is Laura's husband, arrives home. Just like Laura, he's super welcoming to David and lets him stay at their place as long as he wants. Spencer and David have a long chat, and Spencer opens up about some work troubles he's dealing with. Meanwhile, Anna's off with her boyfriend, Zeke. She's telling Zeke about David and what's been going on. The next day, something surprising happens. David shows up at Luke's school. He didn't believe Luke's story about the bruises on his face, so he asked Luke to point out the bullies who had been bothering him. Luke pointed to the group of mean kids who had been giving him a hard time. David and Luke followed these bullies to a bar. At first, David tried to mess with their confidence by buying them really expensive drinks. But instead of feeling flattered, the bullies got mad and poured the drinks on David. So, David had to teach them a lesson and gave them a beating. After that, he used his knowledge of the law and maybe some money to convince the bartender not to report what happened at the bar. Then he told Luke to stand up for himself against the bullies. Now, let's switch gears to Anna and David. They're going to a Halloween party at one of Anna's friends' houses. Anna introduces David to her boyfriend, Zeke, and her buddies Kristen and Craig. David makes a good impression, so they all become fast friends. During the party, Kristen's ex-boyfriend shows up and causes a scene. He's been rude to Kristen, and David steps in to help. He ends up beating the guy and saving Kristen. Impressed by David's bravery, Kristen takes him to her room for some fun. After talking with Kristen, David chats with Craig. He asks Craig where he can buy a gun. Craig wants to know why, but David just says that soldiers like guns. Craig knows a guy who used to sell guns and offers to introduce David. He tells David to get the money ready. Once they've arranged the meeting with the gun dealer, David and Anna head home. On the way, Anna offers to make a mix CD for David. The next day, things start to get weird for Anna. She overhears David talking on the phone, and the conversation makes her feel uneasy. She begins to suspect David and decides to dig into who this David Collins living in her house really is. First, she contacts the military base to check out David's identity. They promise to investigate and share the info with Anna. Meanwhile, word gets to the real David Collins, and a private company called KPG, led by Major Carver, forms a special forces team and heads to the Petersons' house. Turns out, the guy living with them is not the real David Collins. He's some other person in disguise, but nobody knows why he's messing with the Petersons. Now let's switch to David, who's trying to buy a gun with the help of his friend Craig. They meet a guy Craig knows, and after showing the money, gun dealer shows David a bunch of pistols to try out. But here's the twist. David didn't plan to buy a gun. He ends up killing both the gun dealer and Craig, taking all the guns for himself. Back to Anna, she gets info from the military base, confirming that the David Collins at their house is an impostor because the real David Collins is dead. Anna rushes to tell her parents, but they don't believe her. So she decides to prove her suspicions by swiping David's phone and snapping a pic of the recent call list. In the midst of all this, Anna gets a call from Zeke, who says someone has killed Craig and framed him for it. Meanwhile, Spencer's boss at work dies under mysterious circumstances, which unexpectedly gets Spencer the promotion he's been wanting. In the evening, when the whole Peterson gang, including David, is getting ready to chow down, Anna spills the beans about David Collins to her family. But David works his charm and shows Laura and Spencer his soldier identity necklace, and they buy into his story. Anna's getting pretty frustrated, but she's determined to expose David's true colors. The next day, while dropping Luke off at school, she asks her little brother to snoop around David's phone and find out who he's been calling. Meanwhile, David's helping Laura with the laundry when he suddenly heads inside to get the rest of the clothes. Major Carver and his special troops show up and start asking Laura about David. She tells them he's in the house, and David, who was ready for Carver's arrival, launches an attack. It turns into a big shootout between David and Carver's squad. Carver tries to protect Laura, but she darts into the house. David takes a bullet to the thigh, but manages to patch himself up and takes out all the Special Forces guys except Carver. He finds Laura hiding in the kitchen, all confused about the folks trying to kill him. She asks him what's going on, but David doesn't spill the beans. With his cover blown, he stabs Laura with a kitchen knife and bolts from there. On the way, a cloud of dust blinds him, and he crashes into another car driven by Spencer, who's on his way home. David doesn't waste time and shoots Spencer in the head. Carver, still hot on David's tail despite a flat tire, reaches the crash site, but David's gone. He finds Spencer's lifeless body and asks a passing dude to lend him his car because he needs to get Anna and Luke to safety before David gets to them. Carver picks up Anna, who's working at a restaurant. He tells her about her parents' death, caused by David. Carver spills the beans that David is a guinea pig in a military experiment and has been programmed to kill anyone who threatens his identity. It's unlikely he'll stop, even if he wants to. Anna, devastated by the news, calls her little bro, who's getting ready for a Halloween party at school. Not long after Carver and Anna left the restaurant, David rolls up in a car. He's looking for Anna and asks Kristen about her, but instead of answering, he shoots Kristen and then blows up the restaurant with a grenade because he thinks she's acting suspicious. Then David rushes to the school to find Luke. On the flip side, Carver and Anna make it to Luke's school ahead of him and go into a Halloween haunted house set up there. That's where they finally locate Luke, who's cleaning up. Anna gives Luke a big hug, relieved to see her little brother safe and sound. But just when things seem okay, all the lights go out and spooky music starts playing. It's David in the sound room, using the compilation CD Anna had made him. He's turned off the lights and plans to finish them off right there. They follow Luke's teacher's directions to escape, but David was ready for that and confronts them, killing Luke's teacher who was leading the way. Carver realizes it's time for a showdown and tells Anna and Luke to find another way out while he takes on David. But even though he's a major, Carver can't stop David, who's a trained soldier, and David ends up killing him. On the other hand, Anna and Luke find an exit, but David locks it up with chains, trapping them inside. Anna decides to face David, and even though Luke is scared, she tells him that David is the one who killed their parents, and she's out for revenge. So in the end, Luke listened to his sister and hid, holding onto the knife that David had given him just in case. To make a long story short, Anna confronted David and fired Carver's gun at him, but David managed to get back up and sneakily attacked her from behind, stabbing her in the leg. Anna fell to the floor, and David tried to strangle her. She struggled to point the gun at David, but it misfired and messed up the lights, starting a fire. Worried about his sister, Luke decided to step in and help Anna. He stabbed David twice with the knife, freeing Anna from his grasp. Instead of being angry, David seemed kind of proud of Luke, told him he did the right thing, and even gave him a thumbs up before passing out. Before long, the police, ambulances, and firefighters showed up at the school. Anna and Luke were rescued, but they were both deeply shaken by what had happened. While they were sitting in the ambulance, they overheard the firefighters saying they had found only 2 bodies. As some of the firefighters were leaving, Anna noticed one of them limping, and when he turned toward her, it turned out to be David. He had disguised himself as a firefighter to slip away from the scene unnoticed. So the moral of the story is always double-check your Halloween party guests for hidden soldiers with a taste for grenades and firefighting disguises. It's a spooky world out there,